Hi, fifth grade. Today we're going to start reading chapter 7. Before we do that, I want to do a previously on chapter 6. So in chapter 6, we have Billy making his way home with his pups and telling his parents all the experiences that he had while he was in town. So we're going to start with chapter 7 today. At the end of this, I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and those questions are going to be your check-in and attendance for today. And then today and tomorrow's questions, the 5 each is going to count as a grade. Okay, so make sure you're listening and you can go back and find the answers to the questions. Okay, chapter 7, The Red Fern Grows. It seems that the worries and wants of a young boy never cease. Now that I had my pups, another obstacle had cropped up. This one looked absolutely impossible. I had to have a coonskin so I could train them. Okay, why do you think he needed a coonskin to train his pups? If you said yes, because they have to have the scent to follow. So that's why he had to have one to be able to train him. That's why he's wanting to catch one. With my 3 little traps and my bulldogged determination, I set out to trap Mr. Ringtail. For 3 solid weeks, I practically lived on the river. I tried every trick I knew. It was no use. I just couldn't catch the wily old coons. In desperation, I went to my grandfather. He smiled as he listened to my tale of woe. Well, we'd have to do something about that, he said. To train the dogs right, you'll need to catch a coon hide. And for sure, now that you watch this door while I go out to my shed, I'll be right back. After what seemed like an eternity, I saw him coming. He was carrying a brace and a bit. And I kind of want to show you what a brace and a bit looks like so you kind of understand what it is. Hold on. Okay, with a mischievous smile on his face, he said, "You wouldn't think a fellow could catch a coon with this brace and a bit, would you?" I thought he was kidding, and he made me feel bad. "Why, Grandpa," I said, "you couldn't catch a coon in a jillion years with that thing. You just don't have any idea how smart they are." "Yes, you can," he said. "You bet your boots you can. Why, when I was a boy, I caught coons on top of coons with one of these things." I saw Grandpa was serious, and I got interested. He laid the brace down on the counter, picked up a small paper sack, and filled it half full of horseshoe nails. "Now, you do everything exactly as I tell you," he said. "Now, you'll catch that coon." "Yes, sir," I said. "I will. I'll do anything to catch one of them." "Now, the first thing you need is some bright objects," he said. "The best thing is a bright, shiny tin. Cut out some little round pieces, a little smaller than this bit. Do you understand?" I nodded my head. "Now," he said, "you go down along that river where there are lots of coon tracks. Find a good solid log close by and bore a hole," means cut a hole, "down about 6 inches. Drop one of these bright pieces of tin down the hole and be sure it's laying right on the bottom." I was all ears. I didn't want to miss one word my grandfather said. Now and then I would glance at him to see if he was kidding me. He was serious voice, he said, kept talking. "Now pay close attention," he said, "because this is the main part of the trap." With eyes as big as hoot owls, I looked and listened. He took 4 of the horseshoe nails from the sack. With a thumb and a forefinger in his left hand, he made a small O about the size of a bit, which he said was about 1.5 inches in diameter. "Now, we'll say this is the hole. You bore in the log," he said. "About 1/2 inch apart, drive these nails on a slant opposite of each other." Holding one of the nails in his right hand, he showed me the right angle. "The ends of the nails will enter the hole about halfway between the top and the piece of tin," he continued. "Leave an opening between the sharp objects big enough for a coon to get his paw through." He asked me if I understood. Again, I nodded my head and moved a little closer to him. "Now, how is this going to catch a coon, Grandpa?" I asked. "It'll catch one all right," he said, "and it won't fail. You'll see a coon is a curious little animal. Anything that is bright and shiny attracts him. He'll reach in and pick it up. When his paw closes on the bright object and he balls up and he starts to pull out from the hole, the sharp ends of the nails will gouge into his paw and he's caught." Okay, so imagine, you have like a hole in the log. Okay, so this is the hole in the log. So you're going to put these 2 nails going different ways. So you're going to have 2 nails going down like this, okay? So when he puts his hand down, and it will go up and down, but as soon as he makes this, because he wants to pull it up, the nails are going to push into his paw, so he's not going to be able to get it back out. And that's how his grandpa's telling him to catch the coon. Okay, so he looked over at me. "What do you think?" he asked. I closed my eyes. In my mind, I could see the funnel-like entrance of the hole and the sharp slanting points of the nail. I could see the coon reaching in for the shiny piece of metal. Naturally, his paw would be much larger when he closed it, and when he reached up, it would be impossible for it to pass the sharp nails. It was all looking pretty good to me, and I was the point of saying so when it hit me. Why, all the coon had to do was open his paw and drop the object, and he was free. It all blew up then and there. I just knew my grandfather was playing a joke on me. I stepped back and almost cried as I said, Grandpa, you're kidding me. That kind of trap couldn't catch a coon. Well, all you have to do is open up his paw, drop one piece of tin, and pull it out from the hole. Grandpa started roaring with laughter. This did make me feel bad. With tears in my eyes, I started for the door. Wait a minute, Grandpa said. I'm not kidding. I know I like to have my jokes, same as any man, but I meant every word I said. I turned around and looked at him. He had stopped laughing and there was a hurt expression on his face. I wasn't laughing at you, he said. I was laughing more at myself than you. I just wanted to see if you were smart enough to see that there was a way the coon could free himself. A fellow wouldn't have to be very smart to see that, I said. Grandpa started talking seriously again. You know, he said, a coon has more than one peculiarity about him. When I was a boy, I had a pet coon. By watching him, I saw and learned a lot of things. This is the grandpa talking. He had a den in the old hollow tree in a front yard, and I don't know the number of times I had to go climb that tree and get my mother's scissors, buttons, needles, and thimble from his den. Why, he'd even carry out knives and forks and spoons. Anything that was bright and shiny, he took to his den. So his den would have been like where he lived his burrow. Grandpa stopped talking for a few minutes. I could see a faraway look in his eyes. Once again, he was living in those long days. I waited in silence for him to go on with his long story. One of the most peculiar things about that coon, he said, was his front feet. Once he'd wrapped those paws around something, he would never let it go. And so peculiar means like an odd thing about him. My mother had an old churn. It was one of those kind that had a small hole in the lid with a dasher. So a churn is what you used to make butter from, like you would kind of put a hole and you would churn it. When she would get through churning, she would take the dasher out and wash it. That crazy coon would climb up top of the churn, poke his front paw through the hole, and get a fistful of butter. The hole was small, and when he closed his paw, he couldn't get it back out. All he had to do was open it and drop the butter, and he would be free. But do you think he would? No, sir. He would carry that churn lid all over the house, squalling and growling, while it took everyone in the house to free him. I'd have to wrap him up in a gunny sack or an old coat and pry his paw loose from the butter. Seeing this time is what gave me the idea for the trap. Once he reaches in and gets a hold of the tin, he's caught because he won't ever open his paw. Okay, so do you really think this is going to work? We're going to see. With my confidence restored, it all sounded pretty good to me. I was anxious to try this wonderful plan. I thanked him, and taking the brace and nails, I left the store. By the time I reached home, it was late in the day to start making my traps. That night, I talked the idea over with Papa. I heard of coons being caught that way, he said, but I never paid much attention to it. Your grandfather should know, though, he's quite a good coon hunter when he was a boy. From what he told me, from what Grandpa told me, I said, it never fails. Papa asked if I wanted his help to make the traps. No, I said, I can do it all by myself. I didn't sleep too well that night. Why do you think that Billy had a hard time sleeping that night? Yes, I agree, probably because he was really anxious or excited about making the traps and getting his coon. I bored holes, drove nails, and fought coons particularly all night. Early the next morning, I went to the trash pile. As I stirred around in the old rusty cans, I thought of another time I had searched for a can. Finally, I found the one I wanted. It was bright and shiny. Everything was going along just fine until Mama caught me cutting out circles of tins with her scissors, because the tin would have really dulled them and made them not as sharp, so it probably made his mom mad. I always swore she could find the biggest switches any woman in the Ozarks. That time she overdid it. I was almost to the river before the stinging stopped, so I guess she must have spanked him using her scissors. It wasn't hard to find places for my traps. All along the river, large sycamore logs lay partly submerged in the clear blue water. On one where I could see the muddy little tracks of the ringtails, I bore a hole, dropped a piece of tin, and drove my nails. On down the river, I went making my traps. I stopped when I ran out of nails. Altogether, I had 14 traps. Okay, so he made 14. So that probably would have taken him most of the day. So he's really wanting to catch one. That night, Papa asked me how I was making out. All right, I said, I've got 14 of them made. He laughed and said, well, you can't ever tell. You may catch one. The next morning, I was up with the chickens. I took my pups with me and just knew I'd have a big ringtail trap. I wanted them to see it. I was a disappointed boy when I peeked out of the cane brake, my last trap, and didn't see a coon. All the way home, I tried to figure out what I had done wrong, because his grandfather assured that it was a for sure thing, that he was going to catch one. I went to Papa. He put his thinking cap on and thought the situation over. Maybe you left too much scent around when you made the traps, he said. If you did, it'll take a while for it to go away. So if he left his scent, the coon's not going to come if he smelled like a human was there. So he's got to wait a couple days for the scent to go away. I'm pretty sure you'll catch one sooner or later. Papa's words perked me right up, like air does a deflated inner tube. That's a good simile. He was right. I had simply left too much scent around the traps. All I had to do was wait until it disappeared and I'd have my coon hide. Morning after morning, I was at the same old disappointment, no coon. When a week had gone by and still no results for my traps, I gave up. With little patience, I was completely gone. I was firmly convinced that coons didn't walk on sycamore logs anymore, and the bright, shiny objects about half as effect of what the coon would. One morning, I didn't get up to run my trap line. I stayed in bed. What was the use? It was just a waste of time. When the family sat down for breakfast, I heard my oldest sister say, "Mama, isn't Billy going to get up for breakfast?" "Why, he's in his room," Mama asked. I didn't know. I thought he was looking down at his traps. I heard Papa say, "I'll go wake him." He came to the door and said, "You'd better get up, Billy. Breakfast is ready." "I don't want any breakfast," I said. "I'm not hungry." Papa took one look at me and saw I had a bad case of the ringtail blues. He came over and sat down on the bed. "What's the matter?" he asked. "You having coon trouble?" "Papa lied to me." "Grandpa lied to me, Papa," I said. "I should have known better. Who'd have heard of anyone catching a coon with a brace and a bit and a few horseshoe nails?" "I wouldn't say that," Papa said. "I don't think your grandpa deliberately lied to you. Besides, I've heard of coons being caught that way." "Well, I don't think I've done anything wrong." I said, "I've done everything exactly as he said, and I haven't caught one yet." "I still think it's the scent," Papa said. "You know, someone told me, or I read it somewhere, that it takes a week for the scent to die away. How long has it been since you made those traps?" "It's been over a week," I said. "Well, the way I figure it, it's about time for you to catch one." "Yes, sir. I wouldn't be surprised if you came in with one any day now." After Papa had left the room, I lay there thinking what he said. Any day now. I got up in a hurry and hurried and into my clothes. As soon as I had finished with breakfast, I called my pups and lit out for the river. The first trap was empty. So was the second one. The feeling of doubt came over me again. I thought, it's no use. I'll never catch one, and I so need the skin to train my pups. On the way to the third trap, I had to walk through some really thick wild cane. It was tough going through, and my pups started whimpering. I stopped and picked them up. Okay, that's kind of a good way to see how he's going to treat his dog. So they're little and they're having a hard time and they're whimpering, and so he just picks them up and carries them. We'll be out in this in a few minutes, I said, and then we'll be all right. I came plowing out of a matted mass and was right on the trap before I realized it. I was met by a loud squall. I was so surprised I dropped the pups. There he was, my first coon. He was humped up on the sycamore log, growling and showing his teeth. He kept jerking his front paw, which was jammed deep in the hole I had bored. He was trapped by his own curiosity. So, did the trap work? Yes. Okay, so after this, you're going to do 5 questions for me. You can go back through the chapter and look. It's your check-in for the day, and then there'll be 5 more tomorrow for your grade. And we'll finish the chapter to see what happens with the coon that he caught.